Hey y'all, it's David Ducker coming back at you. And we're finally getting caught up. Return of the runefangs, episode 17. Just ran it last night. I'm finally caught up on the videos. So when we last left our daring heroes, they're exiting Castle Grenstadt and finding the valley of Blackfire Pass filled with knights of the Order of the Blazing Sun. So they enter the encampment, and they're quickly shown through to Grandmaster Franz Child, who tells them that a pilgrim caravan has been ambushed in the pass by orcs. And one of them actually made it out, a Templar, a knight who was on a pilgrimage. Not a Templar, but a knight who was on a pilgrimage, made it out of the valley alive. And he's come back asking for help. And the Knights of the Blazing Sun will answer. So he actually asked the party, since we're both going into Blackfire Pass, you in search of thieves and manticores, and I in search of orcs, why don't we head out together? So the party, of course, acquiesces to this, and they start moving out into the valley. And as they're heading through, now this is miles and miles long valley, many small side passes opening up, side valleys. It's a very large mountain chain, and this one passage is the only way through within probably 1,000 miles, at least within 500 miles. It was the only way through to the border princes. But they're actually investigating some of these smaller valleys as well because they're trying to find these pilgrims. And the players are trying to find the thieves who have stolen their ancestral weapon, the Pious Maker, the magical battle axe of House Berengar, gifted to them by Magnus the Pious himself, which they stole from Lewin Berengar, way back in like episode 7 or something like that. But they're coming through, and I believe it was Sir Blaine picked up the trail of the thieves that they're tracking, the bridge rats, or he believes that he's picked up their trail. So it's about it's like 4 horses, one of which is a large draft horse, but then there's a 5th horse. Looks like it just came through this morning as well. So this is just going off into a small side valley. So they talk to Franz Child again, and he assigns a few knights to go with them. One of them has like this carrier pigeon in a cage on his belt, and so he assigns these men to go with the party. And to assist them. One of them is a tracker, and then a couple of them are fighters. But the party basically breaks off from the main body of troops, and they head down into this more isolated side valley. They're following the tracks through. Now the Black Mountains, in my version of Warhammer, it's a volcanic mountain chain. So they're all made of black obsidian and basalt and other volcanic rocks. In this section, it's all inactive, so there are no active volcanoes in this section of the mountains, but it's all this ash-strewn wasteland. And because of all these mountains, many of them were volcanoes, they're riddled with caves that there are magma tubes and vents. But they follow the trail of these horses through. And they eventually track them into a cave. They find actually an illusionary cave. Basically, it looked like a rock face, but as they approached, the rock face kind of shimmered and vanished, and they actually found a secondary cave that had all of the horses inside. So Aura cut the horses loose and just let them go. Without investigating the horses at all, which was interesting. He cut all the Roundseas loose. There's still a Stott and a Palfrey. Stott is a big draft horse. Palfrey is a very fine, expensive riding horse. The round C's are kind of like a generic kind of horse. They're pretty average, medium, you know. So okay, they're all right. But Ulrich set those generic horses free without checking the saddlebags or anything. And while he's doing that, Donnie came through and he checked the bags on the other two. So he may have found some clues in there that he didn't reveal to the party, because he didn't reveal anything to the party. But they came out of this cave that was hidden. They went back into the cave that they saw the trail go into. So it's kind of like a volcanic vent. It's a round, smooth chamber. It's been blasted through the rock by magma thousands of years ago. It's got a lot of small vents coming off the side as well. Most of them far too small for a person to fit into, or even a hobbit. But the vents, they do find a whole lot of these purple salamanders that seem to be living in there, and also luminescent blue moths that are flying through that the salamanders appear to be eating. So they come through the cave into a larger vent, like a chamber, like what was once a pocket of magma, is now this round chamber. They find the walls all scrawled around with this crude, bestial, sharp script carved into the stone. Donnie apparently could read it, and he tells everyone that it says this mountain is claimed by Clan Battle Screamer, and you know, it's written in the black tongue of the orcs, so it's like Battle Screamer, crush 'em good. You no go further. We crush 'em, you too. We crush 'em, best 'em. So this is primitive scrawl. So Josh had some fun describing exactly what it said. Josh, of course, plays Donnie. And they have three main chambers coming off. One that they just came in from, and then two others, one heading down, one heading up. Josh could read the glyphs carved into each tunnel. So one of them said Humies, which is where they came from. And then the one going up actually said Manticores, and then the one going down said, Battle Screamers. Who crush 'em, Decibel? Or something like that. So Donnie started leading them down towards Clan Battle Screamer. And as they're coming through, they came across a few crude orc traps in this tunnel. Sir Blaine was leading the way. He's got his sword and his torch in his other hand. But he managed to notice that the traps, one was like a pit trap where the bottom of the chamber dropped out. It was a big rock covering a volcanic vent. It was just angled so that any weight would drop it down. And I'm trying to think what the other trap was. It might have been like a tripwire with a spear shooting out of a volcanic vent as well. And maybe one that was the opposite of the volcanic rock drop, where it was a rock on the ceiling covering a volcanic vent and with a tripwire. So if you pull the wire, then it comes down and crushes you. But they evaded all of the traps that the orcs had set. And eventually they came through to a chamber where the path continued, but there was a vent, and it looked like it had been blocked with a boulder, and something had pulled this huge boulder out of the way. So they're investigating this. There have been rumors that the thieves they've been tracking, one of them might be a half ogre, or possibly a full-blooded ogre. They're not sure. But they're starting to wonder if maybe he had been the one to pull this boulder out of the way, because no human could probably do it. So while they're investigating, they see something jammed into one of these volcanic vents, and one of the scouts from the Order of the Blazing Sun, he's like, I think I see something. And he reaches his arm into this little vent, and he's like, I've got it, oh! And he pulls his arm out, and it's just an empty wineskin, but it's of human make. So this pretty much proves that the thieves passed through this way. that they pulled the boulder aside and then passed through, and possibly the ogre took a little rest to drink some wine, and then just stuffed the wineskin down like that to try to not leave as visible a trail. So the scout finds that, but one of the salamanders bit him, and he starts to describe like, it burns, my wound burns, and my hand is numb, my elbow, and the numbness starts to spread like up his arm, and everybody's like, heal check, and they're just, and nobody's got any healing training or any healing magic. So this guy is just describing in vivid detail how the poison is spreading through his body, and eventually it reaches his heart, well, he's afraid it's going to reach his heart, and he's just going to drop over dead. Everyone pretty much realizes this. And Donnie actually convinced him, like, maybe if you try to suck the poison out. And the guy, and then he swallowed the poison by accident, and he just fell down dead right there. So the other knight of the Blazing Sun who was with them, he released the carrier pigeon. Immediately just released the carrier pigeon. And everybody's like, watch out for salamanders. So there's a pretty vivid description of what happens when you're infected with poison. You don't have a healer nearby. You don't have healing magic, and you don't have any fate points. Because fate points, are the only thing that can keep you alive sometimes. But they continued through, and eventually they came to a chasm. So basically the mountain had been opened up just over time. This chasm had formed, and the vent had been running through this section. So the vent comes, and then there's big precipitous drop, and then the other vent, and it opens and keeps going up to the mountain, which is split, right? So they do find pittons. There's a piton here, and there's one on the far end. Someone had driven a piton in, jumped across, and driven another piton, so a rope could be looped, and then they could just shimmy across. Unfortunately, the rope isn't there any longer. So Donnie volunteers to jump across because he's the most agile. So he comes in, he gets his running start, he leaps out, he's flailing, and he just catches the edge with his fingers, just with the tips of his fingers, and his body slams against the wall. He manages to hang on, and he starts pulling himself up. But as he's pulling himself up, though, there's a big volcanic vent below him. So he's here, there's a big vent below him, and his big lizard head pops out and looks up, and shoots out the salamander tongue, and it sucks his boot off, and it eats his boot, and he manages to climb up then, and he pulls his knife out because he has a rope attached, so he's thinking, even if I hide, it'll bite the rope and suck me in like spaghetti. So he pulls his knife out and he starts to cut through the rope, starts cutting on the rope, but the salamander goops him with the tongue, and this time it gets him in the face, and it pulls him down into its mouth. Sir Blaine, who's on the far side, first one tied to the rope. They're all tied onto this rope. So he raises his feet and he pulls all his might. And in addition to Donnie wriggling, he pulls Donnie out of the mouth of the salamander, and he swings across and he cracks into the side of the wall, the cliff face. And then Sir Blaine when Donnie hits, Sir Blaine's trying to hold him up, and he just slips, and Sir Blaine goes over the edge. So then Ulrich is the next one tied to them. So he manages to actually catch them, and he's holding them both up as they're just dangling there on this rope. And he's at the top, and he's holding them up. And, he looks back, and behind him is the Knight of the Blazing Sun. And so they're all braced, and Buck Salder, and then Pavla, Sir Blaine's squire. And And Ulrich looks back and he's like, oh, okay, everybody, when I say pull, we start to pull. And the Knight of the Blazing Sun, he lets go, and Ulrich's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then the Knight, so he lets go, and then he walks forward and he grabs Ulrich's back, and he whispers in his ear. He whispers that this is my duty. And Ulrich, what? And then the Knight throws them both off of the cliff face. So once again, Ulrich and Blaine, who are hanging there, now they start to fall. And then there's, Donnie and Blaine are hanging there. Now they start to fall. And then comes Ulrich and this Knight. So Buck Salder is next, and he's not able to catch all that weight. So he goes shooting over, and then Pablo, who's like a 14-year-old boy, I'm like, strength test time, Pablo. Buck failed it, but maybe, and then he shoots out the edge also. So everybody gets their reflex save on. It's their quickness test to try to grab the rock face, and everybody made it except Pablo. So at the bottom of the line, Buck actually grabbed onto one of the volcanic vents. He got his hand in there. So he swings it and he hits the wall. And then Pablo falls down. And, it's the end of his rope and swings in and he smashes into the wall. And he smashes his head because he failed his agility test to get his feet and hands up in front of him. He smashes his head into the wall. And he's knocked right unconscious. So Bucket's hanging there with Pablo just dangling unconscious. Ulrich has this Knight actually still on his back, but Ulrich's managed to grab onto a ledge, onto one of the volcanic vents. And he looks in the vent, and there's this little tiny salamander, this purple salamander, is looking out. It's like, what's going on? Like, what is this out the side of my vent? And Ulrich reaches up and he grabs the salamander and he puts the salamander in the face of this Knight of the Blazing Sun. It starts biting in the face, and we know that they're incredibly venomous. So the paralysis starts to spread through the Knight's face, and the Knight starts trying to shake Ulrich off of the wall so he can drag them all down to their doom. Sir Blaine started to climb up towards the precipice so he can get back onto the ledge. And then the giant salamander, it's still got its head out, and just watch this happen. It looks down, and it opens its mouth, and it shoots out its tongue again. It was trying to shoot out Donnie. It missed the first time, I think, or at least, or it might have sucked his cloak off. Like it got him in the back, but it just ripped his cloak off. So now it's eating his cloak. Donnie actually, as Sir Blaine's climbing up, Donnie actually leans over and he conjures a spell and he starts throwing shadow daggers down into the Knight of the Blazing Sun. So his back, the Knight is hanging on to Ulrich, and his back starts to get perforated, and the lizard poison, and he falls off. And he's still tied to everyone. Fortunately, everyone made their strength checks, and he's just hanging there. He's dead weight, and then Ulrich starts to cut the rope so he can cut the Knight of the Blazing Sun off of him, and he falls off. So now poor Buck has two guys hanging off of him with complete dead weight. So I think Ulrich climbed down. Now that he was free, he climbed down, and Buck's just braced onto a portion of rock. Ulrich came down and he sawed off the dead body of the Knight of the Blazing Sun. So he just went tumbling down, and together they start hauling Pablo up. Meanwhile, Sir Blaine has finally climbed up to the top, and Donnie is just starting to recover. Like he threw his shadow blades, and then the salamander hits him again in the back, and it sucks him into his jaw. and its head just pops back into the rock face, and he's just gone. Because it had bitten, it had been chewing him the first time it had him, and now it just sucked him back in. And its head just popped into the crevasse and is gone. So that was the whole session. Really nice dungeon crawl, very atmospheric with the torch light coming through the caverns and the little salamanders startling people, and signs of the orcs and signs of the Thieves Guild, the Bridge Rats, but nothing really apparent. Then we got the traps, and then the really fun combat with the vertical combat going on, and the Knight of the Blazing Sun betraying the party. James Duffy was co-GMing this session, so he was in fact playing the Knights of the Blazing Sun. So anybody who's mad at that betrayal, I'm looking at you, Mike. Mike was hot at James for that. But anyone who's angry over that can direct your complaints to James Duffy, our co-GM for the evening. And you'll have to tune in next week, episode 18, where we see what goes on from that point, and if if Donnie really is lizard kibble, or if somehow he miraculously survived. And same thing for Paolo, if his neck is broken, or if he's just been concussed badly. So I hope everybody checks out the Facebook group, Return of the Runefangs, on Facebook. See all the character portraits on there. You can complain to James Duffy right on there. But I'm going to be signing out now, so everybody have a good day.